we always want to fly with our tail, and the last thing you want to do is start turning your tail near the slope, and then your tail strikes the slope, either sliding or catching that skid. Coming all the way down now with the collective, till I'm absolutely down, then come back neutral with the cycling. Good afternoon everyone, it's Alex with Anthelion Helicopters, back with you after a short hiatus for some more training videos, and today we are going to do one of my favourites, the one thing that I found really hard when I was a student, which is slope landings, or R-slope landings. When we're picking up and setting down on anything other than a flat surface, which ironically is pretty much everywhere. So today we are going to start looking at that and going over the whys and the whats and the hows of how it all works. The main thing we got to watch with that is dynamic rollover, which essentially, which you guys have learnt, is catching a skid around a pivot point, and then the main rotor becomes essentially a thrusting moment, creating a thrusting moment, and you go over very quickly. In fact, it is the biggest cause of accidents with helicopters when they're in a hover under that sort of height. So extremely important that we talk about, extremely important that we're very conscious about how we do it, and nothing will show just how good at hovering you are at pickups and set downs than how well you do slopes. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please leave some comments and on what we do and what else you'd like to see, and let's get out there without further ado. Alright guys, so here we are on pad 4. Pad 4 has actually got some pretty good slope on the outside of it. Normally I like to go over to the antenna side at Torrance, but noise abatement on Sundays is prohibiting that, so we're just going to do it all here. So like we talked about before, we're going to go through the set down and the pickup portion of the slope landings. The main issue is dynamic rollover, so what we do not want to do is create a rolling moment around the skid and make it into a pivot point, and it will pull us over very, very, very quickly, and we'll pass that point of no return on that pivot faster than we know it, and unfortunately after that will be a statistic. Most of the Robinson helicopters you guys fly there, that lateral moment about how much slope you can do is going to be limited a lot by the lateral stick travel of your cyclic. As we're coming down, we'll talk through it, but if you haven't contacted that downhill skid prior to such a point where you're getting to I would say between a half and 3/4 travel on your cyclic laterally, you probably shouldn't be doing it. You probably should bug out and go and do something else at that point. If it starts getting right to that limit, that's not something you want to play with. In a lot of other helicopters, the bigger ones, sometimes they're limited by something called a mast moment, when they're either a rigid or a sort of a hybrid fully articulated system, and that is usually heavily limited on how much you can actually sort of even bend the mast for this. When I say bend it, I mean in inverted commas really, how much stress you can put on the mast doing a slope landing, and they have usually a little mast moment meter down on the MFD. But for us really, for Robinsons and other semi-rigid systems, we're really talking about the cyclic displacement that we have and the available control. So without further ado, we will pick it up into a hover. I'm going to take my sunglasses off, but it's not sunny. It's grey and cloudy in what should be sunny California, but it's more like England right now. And grey and more grey, especially May grey, but it's actually April. June gloom, May grey, but we're actually gloomy as crap all the way in April right now. So good times, fun times in good old Southern California. Okay. So, let's just back up a little bit here. So all slopes, as a general rule, when you are approaching them, you should always approach them from a 45-degree angle away from the slope. And that's mainly so you can start assessing for the type of terrain that you've got. You know, if there's any loose objects obviously on the slope, you don't want to go anywhere near it. If there's something you look like a tree root or a stone or a rock that you could catch your skid around, be very, very wary. If it's loose gravel or dirt that may slip when you come down onto it, be very, very, very wary of that. The reason we come from this side as well, from away from the slope, is we always want to fly with our tail, and the last thing you want to do is start turning your tail near the slope, and then your tail strikes the slope, potentially. So we're always coming into it parallel 90 degrees so that we maintain as much clearance with our tail as absolutely possible. So here we are coming in, we're going to side slip her in. Again, like I mentioned, this will really test your ability to hover and to do pickups and set downs carefully. It's all about finesse, all about your ability to control a single point of contact with the aircraft. So here I am hovering above the slope. Now this is really going to be a two-stage set down. To start with, again, don't look too close, make sure you look as far out as possible, and then you're going to come down like I am now, almost like breathing out, you know, super slowly. Really just don't push the collective down, just release it ever so slightly until you start to get a little bit closer, until you feel that skid on the ground. When you feel that uphill skid on the ground, then you can pause for just 1 second until you're satisfied that you're good, and then you can lower the downhill skid down, coming into the slope with the collective and slowly down with the collective until you're satisfied you're all the way down, and then back to neutral all over again. We've got a pretty good wind here today, so I'm just going to pick it up and put it down again here. So when you're picking it up, so the first stage is pull the cyclic into the slope so that you're already creating that moment, hopefully as vertically as possible, that lift moment, that thrust moment there. What you don't want to do is have the cyclic at 90 degrees, then when you pick up, you've already got the cyclic coming over about 5 degrees or something like that, and then you can almost create a pivot around that. So always pull the cyclic up so that you're actually level with the direction you want to go up with, not level with the slope itself. And as we start coming up on the collective, again, that downhill skid should break contact first. Be very good with your pedals here to make sure that you don't squirm around with a lot of yaw. Keep nice and light, feel what's going on. Then as we come up, we should feel that lightness in there. As that downhill skid breaks contact, then we should go back to center, like that. And as we are now back at center, I've got 1 skid off the slope, and 1 skid on the slope. Now I'm going to pull up with the collective when I'm satisfied that I'm level. And then we're going to move away from the slope. I'm going to move away 90 degree angle so that you clear that tail. Alright. So we've got a little bit squirrely there on the set down, mainly because it's pretty windy out here and squirrely. So let me just try and do that set down a little bit nicer. Again, so here I am over the top of the slope, coming down. As I hit that uphill skid, I don't want to stay there too long. Once I've got that uphill skid within contact, I want to keep coming down on the collective and coming into the slope with the cyclic at the same time. If I start going down and down and down and down, and I'm like, oh god, my downhill skid has not contacted yet, and then my cyclic is coming further and further across into the slope, there'll come a point where I will actually say, nope, this is not good, and we'll pick up and get out of there. Again, that's to do with the limit that you have on that cyclic travel, but a lot of it will be down to your own comfort as well at the same time. If in doubt, just don't do it. Just don't do it. There's always somewhere else you can find. You do not want to risk either sliding or catching that skid anywhere and rolling over. I think it will all happen in just a couple of seconds that you'll actually rotate the aircraft over into a really, really bad situation. So here we are coming down again, waiting till that downhill skid touches. I can feel it contacting, coming down with a down collective and into the slope with the cyclic, coming all the way down now with the collective till I'm absolutely down, then come back neutral with the cyclic. Do not come neutral with the cyclic until you are full down collective. Otherwise you've still got potentially that thrust which will change from a vertical component into a horizontal component and could start pivoting you around that skid. So be very, very, very careful of that. Keep that cyclic into the slope until you are full down collective, and then only then can you go neutral with the pedals, neutral with the collective, and neutral with the cyclic. Again, picking up again, here we go. So let's anticipate coming into the slope with the cyclic. Helicopter will vibrate because the cyclic is off center, which is absolutely fine. Then we're going to come up with the collective. Remember, pick that point outside, be light on your pedals, keep that nose facing forward, don't pivot with any yaw in there as well. Really, really important. Coming up light on the skids. Wait till you start feeling that downhill skid, breaking contact. As soon as it starts to break contact, keep the aircraft level, keep coming neutral with the cyclic. Now I'm just floating on one skid. When I'm happy with that, come up on the collective. Make sure that right hand skid, or whichever skid you're upslope with, does not have any contact with anything that would cause a pivot. Once you're up in a hover, stabilized hover, move away. That was a little bit cleaner. That second one was a bit cleaner than the first one. So, you know, they are surprisingly difficult to do depending on your prevailing wind conditions as well. That was kind of into a crosswind rather than a direct headwind, which is why we got a bit squirrely there. You know, that was on my side as well at the same time. So what I'm going to do right now is, just for make it more interesting, let me find a bit of this slope, which is going to be the opposite side, just so you guys can see it. So now I'm definitely not in an amazing wind situation. This feels more like a tailwind situation right now. So we're coming in again, slope, 45-degree angle, until this time it's my left-hand skid is the uphill skid. But the same principles apply. So coming down gently until that skid is going to make contact. As soon as I make it, I have contact felt, then I will neutralize across and down on the collective, and then come neutral with the cyclic, neutral with the pedals. Again, you don't want to mess around too long with that uphill skid on the slope, lest it catch on something, but neither do you want to rush it as well and just slam it down. When you pick it up, cyclic back into the slope again. Again, ease up until you get light on the skids. Really make it a two-stage affair, that pickup, just like you did on your basic pickups. And as we're coming up here, we're getting light on the skids. As that downhill skid gets light and comes up, remember, keep your pedals where they need to be, keep your nose straight, come back to neutral with the cyclic. When you're neutral with the cyclic, then pull yourself up. And then move away from the pad. And there we go. That's slopes with both the left and the right side of the aircraft. Important to note, and I think it's really worth noting, that if you regard every single pickup that you ever do, or set down as the case may be, as a slope pickup and a slope set down, you'll always be prepared on the two stages between coming down until you feel contact with the ground. Then once you feel contact with the ground, you may feel it, depending on what your load is, your fuel load, your passenger load, or the slope. You know, some part of the skid will contact first. Once you feel that part contact, then you pause until you're confident that you can manipulate the rest of the controls in a manner that will prevent you rolling about one of those skids. So even on a supposed flat surface, the lesson to be learnt there is that there's always things to catch on. There's always a chance that it's not quite an absolute flat surface. There always might be a bit of slope. There might be debris on a loose surface. So as long as you guys remember that every pickup should be a two-stage pickup, every set-down should be a two-stage set-down, you're just extending that for the actual slope element of it. And the more extreme the slope gets, of course, then it becomes a judgment call if you've got the correct lateral displacement for it to accomplish it safely. Today was slope landings. The big takeaways are from this really every single landing, every single pickup you do, always imagine that it is a slope, because even if it doesn't look like it, the surface may be unimproved, it may have some dirt and gravel, there may be things that you haven't seen on there, but it'll also help slow you down. And every single pickup and set down, the slower you do them, the more controlled, but if you fundamentally very, very similar to how we do a slope landing in terms of that two stages, and making sure that you're solid on all three axes of the controls of the aircraft. So take that with you, hopefully, and learn from it that literally every single pickup and set down should be treated like a slope, and you guys will be fine. As you saw, my first slope landing was not the greatest, and because I haven't done them in a while, so practice makes perfect. But then we got better as we went along with it, so practice, 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 practice. Again, thanks guys for watching. This is Alex from Anthelion Helicopters from the flight training video. We'll see you next time for hydraulics off work, probably settling with power as well. And yeah, look, everyone fly safe back there, and we'll see you again next time. Bye. Helicopter 744 Hotel Sierra